Imagine you're sitting alone at your own funeral. The room is dim, not from the absence of light, but from the weight of everything left unsaid. Around you are the ghosts of your unlived lives, the laughter you swallowed, the anger you denied, the love you never dared to feel. And as the room fills with silence, a question echoes louder than any eulogy: whose life did you actually live? You see, from the moment we open our eyes to this world, we are taught to perform. Smile when you're sad. Apologize when you're angry. Be good. Be nice. Be what they expect. And so piece by piece, we build a mask, the persona. This mask becomes so convincing, so polished, that even we forget it's not who we are. But beneath it, in the shadows, something else is growing, something wild, something true, something terrifying. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the rejected parts of ourselves we lock away in the cellar of our psyche. The traits we were told were ugly, wrong, shameful. The anger we learned to fear. The envy we couldn't name. The desire we were punished for. But the shadow does not die. It waits, it watches, and it acts often without us even realizing. Have you ever snapped at someone you loved and didn't know why? Felt an overwhelming sadness that had no clear source? Sabotaged your own success right when things started to go well? That wasn't you. That was your shadow whispering through you. Because what you refuse to face controls you. Always. We live in a culture obsessed with positivity, with fixing symptoms instead of understanding causes. But no amount of affirmations can heal what you're too afraid to see. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The shadow is not your enemy. It is your teacher. But only if you're willing to meet it in the dark. The truth is, many of us aren't living. We're managing. Managing our image, managing our impulses, managing the emotional chaos we don't understand. But what if I told you that the very chaos you fear is the gateway to your deepest truth? What if the feelings you've tried to silence are not weaknesses, but invitations? When you begin the work of individuation, the sacred process Jung described as becoming who you truly are, you start to unearth the parts of yourself you buried to survive. You stop performing and start integrating. You stop running and start listening. And it's not easy. God, it's not easy. It feels like dying, because in a way, it is the death of who you thought you were. But what's born in its place is something real, something whole. The shadow is not just darkness. It holds creativity, passion, power, the fire you need to become fully alive. But here's the cost: you must face what you fear most about yourself. You must sit with your shame, your envy, your rage, and not look away. You must understand that these feelings are not the problem. Your disconnection from them is. This video is not for passive watching. This is a mirror. And I won't lie to you, it will hurt, it will shake you. But on the other side of that trembling is something you've been longing for all along: emotional freedom. Freedom not from pain, but from being controlled by it. Freedom not from darkness, but from being blinded by it. So I ask you now, not as a teacher, not as a psychologist, but as a fellow traveler. Are you ready to stop performing and start remembering who you were before the world told you who to be? Are you willing to descend into your own depths to retrieve the gold buried beneath your pain? Because that's where we're headed next. And you won't come back the same. The shadow rarely announces itself with a roar. It shows up in whispers, in the sarcasm you use to mask your resentment, the fatigue that clings to you no matter how much sleep you get. the anxiety that floods your chest when someone gets too close. It hides behind the smile you force when you want to scream. It wears the face of your habits, your procrastination, your perfectionism. And the tragedy is this: the more you reject it, the more it controls you from the dark. You may think you're making your own decisions, but the shadow chooses for you every time you avoid conflict, every time you please others at the cost of your truth, every time you sabotage love because it feels safer to be alone. These are not random flaws. They are patterns, traces of the pain you never integrated. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What you think is bad luck, what you think is emotional instability may simply be the result of your unlived self knocking at the walls of your carefully constructed life. And the question is no longer, how do I stop this? The real question is, why have I been so afraid to feel it? Here is a truth: many people never dare to face the things you hate in others. Often reflect the things you haven't accepted in yourself. That friend who talks too much, you're irritated not by their volume, but by your own fear of being heard. That colleague who shows off, they awaken a part of you that still feels unseen, invisible, unworthy. What we project outward is often a map inward, if only we're willing to read it. And then there's the persona, the polished mask we wear to survive. You might call it your best self, but in Jung's view, it's your most rehearsed self. The version of you that's been edited for applause and approval. The one that knows exactly how to behave to stay liked, respected, safe. And here lies the danger: when you over-identify with the persona, you forget that you're so much more than the character you play. The persona helps you function. It helps you get jobs, build relationships, navigate society. But if you believe it is you, the shadow begins to grow in the unattended basement of your psyche. The more perfect the persona, the more chaotic the shadow becomes. Have you ever noticed how people who seem the most put together on the outside often fall apart behind closed doors? This is why. Behind every persona is a pressure cooker of unmet needs, unlived desires, and unacknowledged truths. And one day it bursts, sometimes through a breakdown, sometimes through a mistake that costs everything, sometimes through a subtle but unbearable sense of meaninglessness. But it doesn't have to be this way. You can choose to descend into your inner world before it implodes your outer one. You can choose to face your anger before it poisons your relationships. You can listen to your fear before it turns into paralysis. This choice is the beginning of what Jung called individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. Individuation is not about fixing yourself. You're not broken. You're fragmented, split between the self you show and the self you hide. The process is not linear. It's cyclical, like spiraling into deeper truths with every step. One moment you feel awake, in the next, you're drowning in forgotten pain. But every cycle brings you closer to authenticity, closer to a life that isn't driven by the need to impress or conform. And yes, it's uncomfortable, because wholeness demands you make peace with parts of yourself you've been taught to fear. But here's what no one tells you. The moment you stop resisting the shadow, it softens. It stops screaming and starts speaking. And it says, "Thank you for seeing me." This is the beginning of inner dialogue, not judgment, not rejection, but conversation. You might ask, how do I begin? And the answer is not found in a technique, but in a posture, a radical openness to your own truth. Start with the next emotion that overwhelms you. Pause. Ask yourself, what is this feeling trying to show me that I've been avoiding? Is it grief disguised as anger? Shame cloaked in sarcasm? Fear pretending to be control? Write it down. Speak it aloud. Sit with it. Not to fix it, but to feel it. This is the practice of reclaiming your power. And in the next section, we'll explore exactly how to recognize the voice of the shadow in your everyday life, so that you don't just learn about it, but meet it. You don't need to enter a monastery or retreat to the mountains to find your shadow. It's already speaking in the small frictions of your daily life, in the impatience you feel with your partner, in the tension in your jaw during meetings, in the way your heart races when someone challenges you. These are not random moods. These are doorways. Jung said the shadow reveals itself in projections, in the irrational hatred, intense attraction, or moral judgment we place on others. So the next time you say, "I can't stand that person," stop. Ask yourself, what part of me am I refusing to see that they're mirroring back to me? That's the moment the real work begins, not with blame, but with reflection. Maybe you judge someone for being selfish, but deep down, you've spent your whole life denying your own needs. Maybe you envy someone's boldness, but you've spent years keeping yourself small to avoid failure. Maybe you're constantly triggered by someone's confidence because it reminds you of a voice within that you silenced long ago. This is the shadow in motion, not to torment you, but to wake you up. Another powerful place where the shadow hides is in your dreams. Jung saw dreams as messages from the unconscious, raw, symbolic, often uncomfortable. A recurring dream where you're being chased may point to an emotion you keep fleeing in waking life. A dream where you lose control may reflect a truth you've refused to accept. Write them down. Don't try to decode them like riddles. Let the images simmer. Over time, patterns will emerge, and so will your repressed self. Your body, too, is a messenger. Chronic tension in your neck, stomach, or chest isn't just physical, it's psychic residue. When we suppress emotions long enough, they become physical burdens. The body carries what the mind refuses to feel. This is why shadow integration isn't just mental, it's embodied. When you finally cry, the tears you held back for years, when you finally scream into the void, the rage you swallowed, the body releases what it's been holding. And for the first time, you breathe. But none of this matters unless you apply it. So how do you start living with the shadow, not against it? Start here conscious self-dialogue. When an intense emotion arises, don't numb it or argue with it. Ask it, what are you here to teach me? This question transforms the emotion from an enemy into an ally. You begin to realize emotions are not problems. They are signals. Then reflective writing. Spend 5 minutes at the end of your day asking, when did I feel most triggered today? Why write freely? No censorship. Your unconscious will speak through your pen if you let it. Next, relational mirrors. Think of someone you love and someone you resent. What do they awaken in you? What traits do they carry that you either admire or reject? These traits are yours too. The people in your life are not random. They are mirrors reflecting your unconscious back at you. And here's a truth few are ready to hear. Until you integrate your shadow, you will attract relationships that reflect your wounded self. You'll call it chemistry, but often it's repetition. It's your psyche trying again and again to resolve what was never healed. Integration also demands boundaries. Many people think saying yes makes you kind. But what if saying no is what finally makes you honest? Every time you abandon your truth to keep peace on the outside, you ignite war within. The shadow grows not from anger, but from denied anger. Jung warned that the persona, the false self, is the enemy of integration. So ask yourself, what part of me do I hide to be accepted? What feelings do I silence to be seen as good? If your answer makes you uncomfortable, you're on the right track. This work is not for those chasing comfort. It's for those chasing wholeness. And wholeness includes contradiction. You can be both loving and angry, both compassionate and fierce, both scared and courageous. Integration is not becoming someone else. It's reclaiming all that you are. You might be wondering now, will this ever get easier? Not exactly, but it will get clearer. And with clarity comes power. Because when you recognize the shadow's patterns, they lose their grip. When you embrace your darkness, you stop fearing it in others. When you stop running from your pain, you finally start healing. This is how you become emotionally unshakable, not by avoiding the storm, but by becoming the calm within it. And now that you understand the inner mechanics of the shadow, it's time to meet the deeper forces at play, the archetypes. In the next section, we will explore how Jung's most powerful archetypes, anima, animus, self, and trickster, emerge during this process. How they challenge, guide, and sometimes deceive you on the path toward your true self. Get ready. As you confront your shadow, you stir the depths of your psyche, and from those depths rise the archetypes, ancient universal patterns that have lived in the human soul for millennia. These are not just psychological concepts. They are forces, intelligent, symbolic energies that shape your dreams, your emotions, and your evolution. Carl Jung identified 4 archetypes that emerge with stunning regularity when a person begins the path of individuation: the anima, the animus, the self, and the trickster. Each one plays a role, sometimes wise, sometimes cruel, but always meaningful. Let's begin with the anima, the feminine archetype in the male psyche. She appears in dreams and fantasies as a mysterious woman, seductive, nurturing, wild, or terrifying. She is not literal. She is emotional truth. When the anima awakens, a man is forced to feel, forced to reconnect with the emotions he repressed in pursuit of control or stoicism. But if denied, the anima grows toxic, projected onto partners, leading to obsession, idealization, disappointment. The path is not to destroy her, but to listen. And for women, the animus appears the masculine within. He may take the form of a wise teacher, a distant father, a harsh critic. He governs logic, willpower, structure. But when left unconscious, the animus becomes rigid, judgmental, aggressive. Women may find themselves echoing his voice internally. You're not good enough. You're too emotional. You're weak. But these voices are not yours. They are echoes of a wounded animus, asking for integration, not obedience. The next archetype, the self, is the crown jewel of the psyche. It is not your ego. It is who you were before the world told you who to be. When the self awakens, you feel it as a deep sense of inner alignment, a call to authenticity so strong that ignoring it feels like death. It pulls you toward wholeness. But here's the paradox. To reach the self, the ego must surrender. And most egos would rather collapse than let go of control. That's why self-realization often begins with crisis, the collapse of the old, to make room for the real. But beware the trickster, the most cunning of them all. He appears at the very moment you think you've got it all figured out. He inflates your ego, flatters your insight, tempts you to think you're superior because you've done the work. But the trickster's job is to humble you, to remind you that integration is never done, that enlightenment is not a destination. It is a constant unbecoming. These archetypes are not outside you. They are you. They live in the unconscious, shaping your emotions, your relationships, your stories. And if you resist them, they will act through you unconsciously. But if you welcome them, you begin to live a mythic life, a life guided by symbols, meaning, and inner alignment. But theory is nothing without practice. So how do you keep the shadow integrated in real life? First, develop a daily awareness ritual. 5 minutes in the morning. What emotion is alive in me today? 5 minutes at night. Where did I betray myself today? This creates a rhythm of self-connection. Second, observe your triggers like sacred messengers. When someone gets under your skin, thank them. They are your teacher. They're showing you where the shadow still hides. Third, notice your compulsions. Where are you overworking, over-pleasing, over-controlling? These behaviors are the persona struggling to stay intact. Pause. Breathe. Ask, what am I afraid will happen if I stop? The answer will lead you to the shadow. Fourth, speak the unspeakable. Say aloud the emotions you're afraid to admit. I feel rage. I feel envy. I feel ashamed. In speaking it, you loosen its grip. You become aware, not possessed. Fifth, review your persona regularly. What image of yourself are you clinging to? What parts of you have been left behind to maintain it? Update your identity. Make it more real. The goal is not to be emotionless. The goal is to be emotionally honest, not to become someone perfect, but to become someone whole. And finally, remember, integration never ends. The shadow adapts. It shapeshifts. Just when you think you've healed it, it shows up in a new form. That's not failure. That's evolution. But what happens if you ignore this path? You may succeed externally, but feel hollow inside. You may please everyone, but resent your own reflection. You may build a life of order, but one day, that mask will crack. And what floods out will not be light. It will be everything you never dared to face. So here is your invitation. Don't wait for life to crack you open. Crack yourself open. Begin now. Begin small. Begin with one truth you've been avoiding. Write in the comments, I am willing to face my shadow. Say it out loud. Feel what shifts inside you. And as this video ends, let me ask you one final question. A question not for your mind, but your soul. What part of you have you buried? That might just be the key to your freedom.